Jesus Luzardo, according to Ken Rosenthal, he's gone. Reacting to that on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins _UK. If you are listening to the pod, firstly, hello and happy Thursday. Happy off day as well. This is your team every day, and thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe and leave a review. This pod is available everywhere you get your pods. There's also the YouTube channel, of course. Hit subscribe over on the YouTube channel. It's also called Locked On Marlins. Easy to find, easy to enjoy, easy to watch, easy to comment as well. Join me in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this episode and others. The main topic of the day, Jesus Luzardo. According to Ken Rosenthal, just putting it pretty bluntly, he gone. So we're going to dig into that. Josh Bell equally could be gone, and his trade value could be trending. He's on fire, as they say on old school NBA Jam. I don't know if they say it in any of the current games. Anyway, NBA Jam for Josh Bell. I want to talk about the Marlins All-Star candidates as well, and some Jesus Sanchez conversation. Home run yesterday for Jesus Sanchez. A very prototypical home run. An absolute blast. Destroyed from Jesus Sanchez. I was looking at his Savant profile. Looks amazing. Looked at his actual numbers. It didn't quite align and correspond. So we're going to talk about Jesus Sanchez as well. Tons to get into, guys. But this episode is sponsored by our good friends over at SupplyHouse. And SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to get parts fast. Shop your next plumbing, h-vac, or electrical job and get fast shipping from coast to coast at SupplyHouse.com. And we are starting with Jesus Luzardo, Ken Rosenthal, on his podcast today, talking about some high-profile guys that could be moved at this year's deadline. There were a few other names in there. I think, Pete Alonso was talked about in there. But the one that he felt most confident about was Jesus Luzardo. And this is one that is probably not a surprise to people that follow the Marlins closely. Equally, this isn't one that's has a ton of support by the fan base. No one is advocating that they should move Luzardo because, there's a lot to like about Jesus Luzardo in terms of what he showed on the field, off the field, the backstory, the current control situation. There's loads to like with Jesus Luzardo. But Ken Rosenthal believes that he's gone and most likely to be moved. The rationale from Ken Rosenthal around that is the Marlins season is in the bin. It remains in the bin, unfortunately. There's a few little green shoots of fun and activity. Yesterday's game in particular, one of those. But in reality, they're kind of now hovering around 17 games under 500. And so, the white flag was out some time ago. The white flag was out when they moved Luis Arias, clearly. And that's Ken's point, is the Marlins season is cooked. Arias has already been moved, and others will follow. Luzardo, the most coveted of them, probably. And that's the expectation, considering in a season where clearly there's a lot of injuries, not just from the pitching side, but some of the offensive guys too as well. But there was a lot of high-profile pitching injuries. The Marlins have faced into that themselves. And so the expectation is Luzardo is moved before the deadline. And for those that listen every day to this podcast or watch this show, this is expected, I think. And I've been very much on that train. I've been pretty much on this bandwagon since Peter Bendix was hired. It was kind of pretty clear that Luzardo would be one of the guys they would move on from as they look to restock this farm. They tried to get a deal done the offseason. They weren't able to find the right fit with the Baltimore Orioles. Nevertheless, time ticks on. We're at the end of May now. We're a couple of months out now from the deadline. And for me, the one interesting part here around Jesus Luzardo is the timing of this situation. Right now, Luzardo is back. He's healthy. He's back to performing. His trade value is fine. clearly anything could happen at any moment regarding Luzardo or any other pitcher. And so for me, I am very interested to see whether Peter Bendix takes this all the way to the deadline. Do they risk it? Because fundamentally, it is a risk. Last season, Luzardo healthy all year. But let's not forget the prior year, that wasn't the case. Let's not forget this season, there's already been a period missed for Luzardo. So, he's definitely, like any pitcher, they're not without risk. Only pitched had 18 starts in 2022. And thus far, this campaign has gone 9 games, 9 starts. So for me, that's the main dice roll. And clearly for the Marlins, we've already seen with Peter Bendix, like if he likes a deal, if he's blown away by a deal, he'll pull the trigger on it. And we've seen that with Luis Arias. He loved that deal. He must have done to have pulled the trigger that early. It's super early for that deal. And so I think that's a bit of an indication to the market. That's like a signal to the general market of, listen, we're open to business now. We've got talent that can help you now. Why wait? Why wait until the end of July to make a move? The price is going to still be the same, fundamentally. The price is not really going to drop down. So why not come, find a deal that suits you and us, mutual deal, and get Luzardo now? Very interested to see whether any GM takes that approach. And it may be injury related, right? If someone goes down or things start to go sideways for a club, they may think, okay, it's time to pull the trigger. And I guess in that situation, like it's dangerous to be truly reactive like that as a GM. Like if we think about it, if, I don't know, for the Phillies, for example, Zach Wheeler goes down, comes over to London, it goes poorly, ends up he's out for the year after his London trip, whatever it might be. That's like mid-June. It's tough for a GM then to kind of like, I think, really flex at pace and go and acquire someone like Luzardo that's going to have the cost attributed to him in terms of prospect capital to just kind of flex because, well, an injury's happened and we're going to need to replace this guy. For me, that feels like if I was a GM, a very dangerous and reactive situation that probably leads to poor decision-making, to be honest with you. So maybe we hope that some of the GMs out there, not that I'm praying for injuries, but I feel like if the Marlins are sitting there waiting for an injury to happen to then leverage a more sizable return for Luzardo, I'm not convinced that that's going to lead to what they're looking for. I'm convinced now, though, that Peter Bendix is already working the phones. I'm convinced that teams are already in touch and have been in touch for some time around Jesus Luzardo. I'm convinced that Peter Bendix has a preferred deal with a club or two that is in mind. And we're maybe at that inflection point, that staring contest of, well, who's going to blink first? The reality is, for Peter Bendix at this point, he holds in some degree the leverage up until the deadline. Like I said, as soon as, up until the deadline, for me, there is no drop-off in value. June and July, it's irrelevant, really. Like the value is still high on Luzardo. He has those, he has the years of control, beyond this season. And so, it's just a matter of when, not if. But again, the point I'm trying to make here is like it's dangerous for the fish too. Like if something goes wonky here with Jesus Luzardo in terms of injury, less so performance, more so injury. But like if he gets hurt and goes down, then that kind of takes the Marlins trade situation up in smoke. And so I think where I'm landing on this is I'm with Ken. I believe that Luzardo is going to be gone. But the thought I have is he's going to be gone, I believe, sooner rather than later. There's a few guys sitting in the organization that can kind of pick up the innings anyway, irrespective. Not that the Marlins are competitive at this point, so it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme. And they've kind of proved that with Sixto kind of rolling out there every 5th day. So you move Luzardo, Cabrera can come back in at some stage if he makes it back. He may be traded too, who knows? There's other guys down in AAA. There's Max Meyer down in AAA. I mean, there's tons of ways to kind of fill those innings. We'll see. So for me, I'm just wondering if they take a more Luis Arias methodology, get a deal they like. If they like it, they'll pull the trigger early. Let's not wait until July and bet the future on holding out for a month for what maybe there could be a better deal out there. I don't know. So Really interesting situation. Disappointing as well for Marlins fans too, right? Because he is absolutely a Marlins, fans' favorite, really, Jesus Luzardo, and has had a great stint. Let's not forget, acquired for just a couple of months' worth of Starling Marte. The Marlins did their thing. Kim Ang, what a deal that was. And it looked like an amazing deal at the time. I remember thinking, boy, oh boy, I can't believe they managed to do that for Marte. And then obviously Luzardo's fully taken off since, which is great. I just want to call out, though, on Luzardo, by the way, that he is who he is in some ways. And actually what we've seen in his years with the Marlins after his first, slowish start when he was acquired. But he is who he is, and he's certainly an effective pitcher, no doubt about it. But there's definitely challenges that Luzardo has in his profile. There's often a lack of ability to go deep into games. The strikeout rates are normally high, more than a K per 9, clearly. He goes after, he's looking for the strikeout a lot. He looks to be aggressive. He looks to attack. He looks to, get those swings and misses, really. That's kind of Luzardo's game. At the same time, that is not overly efficient in the grand scheme. Not like a Sandy Alcantara, where all of a sudden you can have a 7-pitch inning just kind of sprinkled in there, because Sandy will kind of really pitch to contact at times, etc. Like Luzardo is a completely different profile to that. And so he absolutely is a top-level arm, no doubt about it. I have concerns over Luzardo around his durability, for loose concerns around that. But equally, he's not the type of guy that's going to give you 7, 8 over and over and over again. I think kind of Luzardo is in that 5, 6 threshold, which is fine. It's completely fine. It's not a knock on Luzardo, but I think that's what we see more often than not with him. I think the other thing with Luzardo too, when you look at you want to have a look at his Savant profile and see what's cooking there. One thing that stood out to me is, man, oh man, there's a lot of hard contact that Luzardo gives up. A lot. And it kind of stunned me. He's either striking guys out, or he's giving up a ton of hard contact. And so, I do wonder, put Luzardo out of Lone Depot on a more regular basis, which is like ultra pitcher friendly. Like, you do have to wonder there, like if Luzardo could maybe take a step back in some ways. So listen, he's been a top part of this rotation. It's going to be tough to lose Luzardo, but I think as Marlins fans, we're all resigned to that fact. We know that Luzardo will be moved because we've already seen him try to be moved during the offseason. Ken Rosenthal believes he will be gone, and I think we've all accepted that. The question will be is, what does the package look like, and who ends up paying the price? I think that's clearly one of the most intriguing stories here, and it should be a super package for Luzardo. And the other thing, too, wouldn't stun me, is if the team that acquires him goes down a similar method that the Twins have been down with Pablito, where you trade for and you extend, you build around, you get the talent in the organization, and you're not afraid to extend that talent because, Luzardo's still super young. And I guess this is the frustrating part for the Marlins fan base, me included, that you've done the hard work. You've managed to go and find a guy for 2 months of Starling Marte. You've developed him. You've taken him to the next level. These should be the years. This should be, you've done the hard work. Now should be like payback time. But unfortunately, he has to be sacrificed. One eye on the future, one eye on the present, etc., etc. So we'll see. I think sooner rather than later, though, on Luzardo. I don't think it goes down to the back end of July, personally. Let's hit the pause button there a second. But when we return, I want to continue this conversation about guys that are hot, particularly Josh Bell, who's heated right up. And then after that, I want to talk about the Marlins All-Star candidates. Unfortunately, I don't think Josh Bell will have done quite enough to get into that mix. But before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse. The graphics are pumped as well. And you can get supplies from the site that's made for skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, h-vac, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support, industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Thursday, the 30th of May. Jesus Luzardo, according to Ken, is gone, as expected. The question is when, not if. The question is, what does the package look like? How impressive is it, so to speak? And, we'll all be interested in that situation, no doubt about it. Let's segue over to the offensive side. It's fair to say Josh Bell, after a real slow start, has heated right up, had a great series against the Padres. I guess old friend to the Padres, right, with Josh Bell. He was at the Padres, wasn't he? I said that, and maybe he wasn't. I think he was. Was he at the Padres? Anyway, Josh Bell was on fire, which is great to see. Like I mentioned earlier, slow start for Bell, slow out the blocks. A lot of the talk in this offseason was full season of Berger, full season of Bell, etc. The offense will be fine. And the funny thing is with this Marlins offense, like we've seen it this series, it kind of encapsulates things. Either it's like completely dead or it looks lively, super lively. And to be honest with you, the times this offense looks most lively is when Vidal Brujan's in there and Nick Gordon's in there. Jazz is in there. Those couple of guys in there just completely change the dynamic and the profile of the lineup and what it can do. And I feel like that's the type of ball, that's the type of game that I feel like the Marlins should be playing. And, we saw it, yesterday, really. Yu Darvish, chased out of there after 3 innings. 3 innings of work, and he was chased out of there, which is impressive. But like I said, Josh Bell being a big catalyst to that. Multiple 3-hit days on the spin, which is really super encouraging. As we know with Josh Bell, expiring contract for him, plays first base, hits from both sides of the plate. I feel like if the Marlins eat the dough, then there'd be a way to get some sort of return on Bell. Like, it's not going to be, game-changing on the face of it. But I think these kind of Josh Bell potential trades, if indeed the Marlins can move him, and they can, I believe they can move him, particularly if they eat the money. I think that's the key bit here, because like there's a big league stick there, a power stick from both sides of the plate. Like there's value in that, no doubt. But I think this type of trade, these are the ones where, like Peter Bendix and his front office guys, this is where they really kind of make their money in many ways. This is where they show to us as the Marlins fan base. And it won't be obvious right now. It won't be obvious at first glance. Like the deal that comes back for Bell will probably on the face of it be underwhelming. We'll be looking going, well, who the hell is this dude? And what have they seen in this profile? But this is the thing. They'll bring back something or multiple pieces, whatever it might be. There'll be some question marks, but then it's looking at them and seeing how they develop the next year or two beyond that. And that's the bit. This is where Peter Bendix can really kind of signal to the Marlins fan base, listen, we know how to identify talent. We know where to spot value. We know how to develop that talent, and we're going to do that. And what became 2 months of Josh Bell and a bit of, eating dough becomes maybe 2 big leaguers in 2 to 3 years' time. And that's what we're looking for. That's how we're looking for Peter Bendix and his cronies to cook. That's how we're going to measure Peter Bendix's impact. For all the talk, for all the analytics, for all, the hyperbole, I guess, around the Tampa Bay Rays and the model that they, continue to roll with, as a Marlins fan base at this point, we need a couple of little signals. We need a few little stakes in the ground to go, okay, this is what Peter Bendix is at, and this is the value that he can deliver. It was interesting that Barry Jackson, a few days ago, I think kind of highlighted off the back of Luis Arias winning Player of the Week, having, 500 or something, knowing Luis Arias. Nevertheless, he kind of signposted that the offensive guys coming back in that deal. Well, one of them is back on the IL, having been traded for while he was, hurt already. So Dylan Head hasn't really had an opportunity to impact things. And the other two guys, whilst they kind of started pretty hot, multiple walks and multiple hit games, they've really tailed away fast as well. So, it's funny that like Barry Jackson just calling out Dylan Head injured, the other two guys underwhelming thus far. Yes, we're only a month into this. This isn't snap reaction. It isn't who's won the trade, who hasn't. I mean, that's the way the trades work, though. You will always analyze that. And frankly, moving Arias, the first major trade that Peter Bendix executed, and one that he loved because of the timing and the amount of money they had on this deal, he had to love this deal. And so these three players, you got Sucko. We'll see if he was just like a salary dump or actually is a big leaguer. We'll wait and see in the future. But these three guys are going to be heavily tracked, much like the prospects that came back in the Yelich trade. These guys are going to be tracked forever now because they're forever linked to a batting champ that was loved by the fans, that was moved super early. And that's just part of the business, right? Bendix needs to nail those deals. Absolutely. Like, two of those three guys have to be big leaguers. They have to be. Otherwise, the model's flawed. We should put the model in the bin. So if Bendix can't nail them, then there's a big problem. However, going back to the original point, to get something back for Josh Bell and to then develop them into big leaguers, that's the difference maker. Those are the difference-making deals where clubs are willing to give, fringe prospects that maybe the Marlins see value in and can develop into big leaguers. So Josh Bell playing himself into, and I think Josh Bell will be moved. I mean, he is heating up, which is really encouraging. And like I mentioned, it was in a similar spot last year. He started ultra slow. And then obviously the Marlins acquired him, plugged him in, he caught fire in the second half and was a big catalyst. And so I can see exactly the same thing happening. Yes, it's only a first base guy, only a DH guy, but there's still value in that. And I think the Marlins will see value from Josh Bell. Let's hit the pause button again here a second, and then we will continue the conversation, look at potential Marlins All-Stars this year. I put a tweet out and a poll. Yes, I put the Graham poll out there asking, who we think should be the Marlins representative or who could be the Marlins All-Star representative. So I'm going to dig into that shortly. Before we do that, it's time to let you know about our good friends, of course, over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. We've got the graphics pumped. And it's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, guys, back here with me, Peter Pratt, on Thursday, the 30th of May. Final segment, then we're out of here. Jesus Luzardo, according to Ken Rosenthal, is gone. Josh Bell is on fire, and I think he will also be gone. The question will be is what return can Peter Bendix get out of that deal, and can he demonstrate to the Marlins fan base the value he can add? Turning a couple of months of Josh Bell into big league players in the future, that's what it's all about. Like I already mentioned, pressure is on around the Arias deal. That is akin to the Christian Yelich situation. Maybe there was more control with Yelich, clearly, but for Peter Bendix, he will always be measured by this Luis Arias deal. And basically those three guys, the three main headliners right now, too early to say, but unfortunately, none of those three are completely blowing it up thus far. Let's talk about Marlins All-Stars because, we're circa, 6 weeks out from the All-Star game. And, voting will start to kind of get ramped up and we'll kind of, be the usual Braves being voted for everywhere, the usual thing. But I did want to talk about it and consider who the Marlins representative could be. In my opinion, there's at least 3 candidates, viable ones, in my opinion, anyway. And they sit into one offensive dude, one starting pitcher, and one reliever. And so a nice, balance, let's say, to the potentials there. Let's start with the pitcher, and we spoke about this one earlier in the week when Loud Marlins fan joined the show. We're talking about the impact that some of the the guys have had in the rotation. Obviously, we've seen Braxy back, obviously Luzardo coming back after his time away. But one guy that has kind of been there and basically performed all year has been Mr. Reliable, Mr. Dependable, and the guy that's been able to go deepest into games the most regular is Ryan Weathers. And you have to consider at this point whether Ryan Weathers is the leading candidate at this point for the Marlins. As always with these, it's super competitive to get onto the roster. And I think what often happens for the teams that are putrid in terms of their record anyway, I mean, I actually think there's a lot more talent on this Marlins roster than the record, maybe would indicate. But with that being said, I think Ryan Weathers for certain has been the nicest surprise overall. He's been the most dependable guy in the full body of work. And I think probably at this point, if you were to take a straw poll right now, would say probably Weathers deserves it right now. So we'll wait and see. But as I mentioned, those teams that often are below par on the year, that have to, they have a representative because everyone does, rightly or wrongly. There's, it's often a reliever that kind of somehow sneaks in. And so I guess the second option really is Tanner Scott. And you look at Tanner Scott, firstly, I was thinking back to this situation, the way that again, another Kim special to go and somehow get Tanner Scott from the Orioles. It was a two-player package, actually. I can't even remember the other guy that came back who was supposed to be the headliner, who was absolutely putrid, who was moved, pretty soon after that. But, for Tanner Scott, man, oh man, in the Skip Schumacher era, let's call it that, he has been just absolutely phenomenal. And it was a bit of a slow start to the season, but it's been so impressive for Tanner Scott. Again, like it's just a continuation. Again, this is another frustrating thing where, it's an expiring deal. I don't think there's any conversation at all about extensions or anything. Like clearly, the Marlins, the next season or two are probably not going to have a huge need for a high-paid reliever. But, whilst you look at the Savant profile and it's not quite as sexy as last year, it's still super sexy for a reliever, no doubt about it. So, I think Tanner Scott's going to be right in there. His ERA right now is better than last year, sitting at 157 if you do indeed like focus on ERAs. His whip is, a little bit higher than last year. Last year, his whip was under 1. It's 1.3 at the moment. 7 saves as well for him, 4 wins, 4 losses. It's the walks did, creep back into his game, particularly earlier in the campaign. But, for me, Tanner Scott, I think is a real strong chance to be an all-star. I think in reality, he probably should have been an all-star last year. When we look back at like what he delivered in the full season worth of work as well, he absolutely deserved to be an all-star. And so my gut feel is that Tanner Scott will probably be the Marlins representative. I think Ryan Weathers is an honorable mention, no doubt, but I think Tanner Scott ends up being that guy. We're still a few weeks away, and with relievers, anything can happen, anything can blow up at any point. So we'll wait and see. The other final guy to mention, I looked at it this morning as I woke up, as I always do, and started think of things related to the Marlins, because that's just how I'm tuned in these days. But I was looking around at the outfield situation. In the NL, there's a lot of talent around, on paper in many ways, for the NL in the outfield. Obviously, Ronald Acuna Jr. going down recently, reigning MVP, so he won't be there. And I started to look at, obviously Jazz is really starting to catch fire at the moment. And I think if this is sustainable for Jazz for the next month or so, considering the broad appeal that Jazz have, the broader appeal than like any Marlins player has. Let's not forget he was voted in as an all-star in 2022. It wasn't just the, hey, every club needs a representative guy. No, Jazz was voted in at second base as an all-star and was voted in as the starter as well. And so that just shows you that Jazz has the ability, he has the fan base there that could propel him to a second all-star appearance. When you look specifically at center field, like I know that's not how maybe all-star voting works because it's like, grouped as an outfield. But if it was just a center field all-star vote, I mean, Jazz would be right up there, in my opinion. Like center field in the NL at the moment is it's taken a little bit of a step backwards this year, seemingly. There's a few guys that, were underperforming, et cetera. And so Jazz, for me, like, he'd be right up there. I think when you broaden it to the wider outfield, there's definitely, brings in a few more names, clearly. But for me, Jazz is going to be up there. I think he has a chance to be voted in as an all-star, particularly if he continues this current pace. So, I think if Jazz doesn't make it and isn't voted in as the all-star, as an all-star for the Marlins, then it wouldn't shock me if Scott ends up taking that spot and selected to the roster. Nevertheless, guys, we are out of time for today's episode. I'm going to be back tomorrow previewing what is a doozy, as I've already mentioned. Jose Urena is on deck, ready to face Sixto Sanchez. Jose Urena versus Sixto Sanchez for the Marlins and the Rangers should be an absolute doozy on Friday. Looking forward to previewing that one. But Jesus Luzardo is likely to be gone. It's just a matter of when, not if. Josh Bell on fire, he will be gone. And it is a matter of when, not if. And Marlins All-Star race, in my opinion, 3 candidates, a top 3. Ryan Weathers, Tanner Scott, Jazz Chisholm Jr. At the moment, my gut feel is that Tanner Scott gets it. However, I do believe that Jazz has a chance to be voted in as the All-Star, a second-time All-Star for the Marlins. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we dig into Jose Urena and Sixto Sanchez. See you then.